population of Newfoundland has dropped from about 570,000 down to about 510,000, what it is now. When the school system in Newfoundland peaked, there was 160,000 kids. Now it's about 80, but it's going to go down to about 60,000 because the birth rate has been less than 5,000 live births the last number of years in Newfoundland. So you can see it going down. So the rural communities are basically built with elderly people. We've reduced in many places, having 30 parishes, now we're running them like 19 because there's just not enough people to support the priests, support the village, whatever. So we had to combine. So this has forced the priests to do a lot of travel. The other blow that we received in '97, the Catholic school system was, by referendum, was voted out of existence. So now all of a sudden we didn't have any Catholic schools anymore to educate. So we're left in a situation, how do we care for the people in the rural areas, and how do we hand on the gospel? So Catholic Missions of Canada have come to our rescue. Many of our buildings are dilapidated and because of lack of people, the resources. So the development of our Catholic Missions of Canada have been very generous in helping us. Matter of fact, they've built a church in Harbour Round, they built a church in Fleur-de-Lis, they've built several churches, different places for us. And they also help us money for catechists to pass on the gospel message, provide funds for priests, sometimes just gas for his car, and food for his table. It's there's a certain sadness to it. People who have worked all of their lives in the sea, like one old man said, one day he said, like Bishop, he said, like when I get up in the morning and look out over the water, he said, there's a ache in my heart and a tear in my eye because he can't be out there fishing. Something he did since he was a boy, 10 and 12 years old. He can't go, He can't go anymore. And there's a certain sadness creeps into it. So try to have Newfoundlanders move somewhere else to work in this, They have gone, they've chased jobs. In the Western Canada, they're off in the offshore and the oil rigs, they're chasing jobs everywhere they can, to try to make a living. So right now they talk a lot about the great community. A lot of them work 6 weeks out in Weston and come home for 2. Some work 21 days on, 21 days off. They have all different kind of things. But I say, a lot of them just don't come back. But Newfoundlanders love Newfoundland. They love that rocky land, As they, there's a songwriter by the name of Davish from down the South Coast. He writes one that's a very philosophical song he writes. He says, tell them Newfoundlanders going away to Toronto or something. They say, they move without leaving, but never arrive. Deep there's a certain truth. They feel out of place. They love that place. And that's why they tell the story, how do you know Newfoundlander when you're in heaven? He's a guy who wants to go home. Because they love it, and the reunions all over the place. And some of these, the resettlement that took place in the 50s and 60s on the little islands out to Pennsylvania and these places, people come back in droves to have their parties out there, and and camp out in some of the old houses. Some of them come back and have cabins out there. So that's the life thing, that kind of life that they have. So I say Catholic Missions of Canada continue to help us there on the East Coast in the Diocese of Grand Falls, in Labrador, in St. George's Diocese up along the Great Northern, up that way through Conch in these areas, the same kind of thing with the collapse of the fisheries. Of course, too, it's getting worse. We had 3 paper mills, now we only have 1. One in Grand Falls closed, one in Stephenville closed. Of course, in Labrador you have and Inuit there. One thing that is a bit of a revival in Newfoundland is mining, because of the high price of minerals. Now it's profitable to open some of the mines that have been closed for years. So now they're trying to. So that is a bit of a future. And everybody's moving into around the St. John's area. The St. John's area is a bit different. They have the oil, they have the hospital, they have the university and everything there. So it's a bit of a different story there. So, but there's a certain sadness when you go to these communities. Like one old lady said to me one time, she said, look, we lost, the gas station's gone, post office gone, the store's gone. When's the church going, Father? The school's gone. When are you going to take the church out? And we say, as long as you can maintain it in some way, we'll continue to try to get a priest there for you. Perhaps not every Sunday, but once. So you have an obligation as well. And they have been, they do a lot of work themselves, fixing things up there. They're very industrial. Newfoundlanders can turn their hand to anything. They can build anything, fix anything, whatever. They're very handy. You know, and they try to live very frugally. They a bit of fish and a bit of moose and whatever, and a bit of seal. They try to live. But it's a certain sadness that a way of life is passing away. In rural Newfoundland, what is happening, many of the elderly people are beginning to move into the centres. It seems like the government's new relocation policy was to have everybody in the TransCanada. Like Clarenville, Gander, Grand Falls, but every 100 miles you build a big hospital. That's where the hospital is, that's where the stores are, that's where everything is. And the old elderly people are saying, my kids aren't around anymore, my health is starting to go, I want to be close to the hospital. So you'll find some seniors, a lot of them moving into these centres to be close to their, to be close to their, to the doctors. I say in the communities, how long will many of them, St. Brendan's Island, for example, one time 1,500, so 130 people left from St. Brendan's Island. 13 kids and 3 teachers, huh? Things of this nature are happening in the area, and how do you maintain this whole infrastructure? It's a big island, few people. Bishop Crosby left, you got more Catholics alone in Hamilton Dyes than there are total people in Newfoundland and Labrador. Newfoundland probably out of the populated 510, they probably have about 178,000 Catholics. Because much work is seasonal, the unemployment rate in the rural areas is high because because of the nature of the work. But I say they're trying to work. They want to fish, they can't fish because there's no fish to catch anymore. Whether it'll ever come back, God only knows. The paper mills, they won't come back. They're gone. The one in Kruger, one in Corner Brook keeps going. Newfoundlanders have a great educational system. And they educate people and export them all across the country here now. They do. It's hard to believe that, the little university is not little. It was 17,000 or so. It's the largest university in Atlantic Canada. And in the lowest tuition, probably $3,000 for your tuition. So it's, and they do that to attract people and to try to educate the Newfoundlanders. I'll tell you a story. I was up in Florida Lee. Somebody might have heard this story. Up in Florida Lee a few years ago. The year that Paul McCartney came. Remember Paul McCartney and his wife came there and camping out on the ice boat, the seals? Yeah, they were there, So, old Mr. Shea up there, there's a little, in Florida Lee, there's a little seal plant. When they skin a seal, they leave it with this much blubber on it. So they come in and it goes through a machine, they take the blubber off, and they put the blubber through a wringer to make omega-3 fatty acids, which are good, And then they salt the hide and send it away. Mr. Shea says that a singing fellow from England and his woman, they rode on the ice there, and they were taking pictures of little baby white ones. We haven't been able to kill a little white coat since the 80s. Not allowed to do it anymore. Not allowed to do it anymore. I said, no, it's tough. He said, well, Danny, that's the premier. He said, Danny took them on right on CNN, They were in Prince of Wales, they thought they were Newfoundland, for God's sake. He said, but anyway, that didn't work. But he said, worse than that, he said, that French woman, that Bridget Bardot, who took the seal years ago, he said, that Bridget Bardot, she phoned Harper and she wanted to complain. And he said, I was sitting there watching television with the missus, he said, and they're talking to the Bridget Bardot and had her picture on there. And the announcer said that she was a sex symbol. He said, looked at her and looked back at the wife and said, good cripes, if she's a sex symbol, I'm going to kick the woman, huh? So that's how they go. Recently now we had a little bad rap too. Igor, part of it because of the infrastructure, hit us hard. Of course, Winnie's family were cut off. Because of the washout of the roads, people were cut off, you couldn't get in. And many of them, so what they would do, they would take some of the ferries that used to go to Bell Island, and they put 2 Sobeys trucks on it and put them into the middle, or some smaller, right, the military helicopter place things in, to try to keep it all going. Like down on the Buren and up on the Bonavista, where we hit the hardest, because of the washout, they isolated the community. But in Bonavista, in Port Union, One of the sad things there, the fish plant owned by OCI, Ocean Choice, when the water came in and moved the fish plant, of course, it got into the electrical system and fried everything. So the question now whether it'll ever open again, whether it'll ever bother opening again, nobody, it's owned by Sullivan's, but whether it's going to open again, nobody ever knows. Whether it will again, with 400 people working in it, with crab and shrimp, so they get enough hours, enough weeks there to, get their BI in this. So whether that's ever going to open again is a good question. The government, I must say, they've been a tremendous outpouring of generosity. They had a phone-in program there, and in one of the malls, they raised $1 million, one thing, for the Red Cross and Salvation Army to move in to try to help these people, and the government getting grant. One of our hosts in Bonavista, or in Port Union, the basement's all flooded. It's all gone. Had a bit of water in the church in Clarenville, but our churches weren't too bad. So I must say the priests down in St. Bernard's, a place called, down there they call it Jack's Mountain, Jacques Fontaine, but if you say Jacques Fontaine, they say you're trying to be grand, so Jack's Mountain, that's right. So down in Jack's Mountain, I was down there, and some of the place had been washed out a bit, and I was went into a house, and the water had been into it, and there was plaster on the floor and dirt on the floor and everything, and a fellow was in there with a pair of rubber boots on mucking her out. He said, "Bishop, take off your shoes before you come in now, won't you?" In the midst of everything, they still got a sense of humor about the disaster. In Port Union, I say also, there's a number of houses, but the tremendous outpouring of help for them, and they'll get through this. They'll get through this. Newfoundland are resilient people. They will write songs about it and sing about it in years to come. So, so that's just a brief rundown of a few thoughts. So if any questions, they're willing to take.